Come all you young rounders, and a story I'll tell of the promise of heaven.
All right, welcome back. It is the Built by Vitality podcast. As always, I'm your host, Steve Pinkerton. Sitting to my right, your left is
Philip Lewis.
And today, we're going to talk about why AC is such a crutch.
Oh my God. Speak.
Can you speak?
Yes.
No, not yet. So before we start, I want to explain to you a little something. At my age, I've been doing this 13 years at Vitality. It's hard sometimes. I'm such a structured person. I don't get a ton of joys, like little wins every day. You know, I know when the wins are coming, kind of deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But man, can I explain to you guys how much enjoyment it brings me when I can pop into Phil's office unannounced and say, hey, I got something that came on my mind. Let's do a podcast right now. And for those of you that don't know Philip, man, he is a planner. All right. So it completely threw his whole, he told me his whole day is ruined.
Man.
And there's a lot going on.
I had a set thing today.
And it makes me so happy to be able to do this. He asked me what the topic was. I didn't even tell him. And I love doing that too, because then I get really raw emotion from Philip. I know. You know? So before I get into, and what I mean is the air conditioning, I believe, and heat could be the same thing. And here's the direction that I'm going, and then you can steer me back into what you think this is. All right, and why that AC is the greatest invention since sliced bread.
It's pretty good.
Perfect example. We're down here in the South, and it's 100 degrees for the last few days. Monday, busiest class time is 4:30. That's the class I coach. Mm-hmm. It's usually packed, 20 to 22 people every time. You know how many people I had in my class?
It was
10.
small. Yeah, it was small, the
10.
ones I coached after.
Because it was about 100 degrees.
Yeah.
And we had some rain in there. And I specifically I woke up in the morning, checked the weather, and I was so happy that it was going to be super hot, because I like that. I like getting people to get outside their comfort zone a little bit, just test their mental toughness a little bit. And the heat will do that very, very quickly. But I realized I started to see attendance lacking this week because of the heat. And I thought to myself, that's odd to me. Why would I let the temperature affect me working out or taking care of myself?
They don't feel good.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, that's the only reason, really.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't feel good.
You know, I'll make a generalization. I was never a police officer. But when you see police officers, a lot of times in a hotter climate, they'll have their windows down. Mm-hmm. And you got to ask yourself, why do you have your windows down? Well, to me, it's kind of obvious. If I'm chilling inside of a car at 68 degrees, blowing cool air at me, and it's 100 outside, and something happens, and I need to get out of that car and chase somebody or do something, and if the 100-degree heat hits me,
you went from 60-something to 100, something like that.
I mean, it feels like I'm in an oven, right?
Yeah.
So they won't do that because they want to be somewhat acclimated to the outside temperature. Mm-hmm. All right? Well, it's no different. Your bodies will get used to this, but we've become so soft in the ability of air conditioning and heat that whenever something is just the least bit uncomfortable, we want to just make that quick little adjustment. Oh, just turn the heat up. Oh, just blow the cool air, instead of just letting our bodies naturally regulate to it. And that struck me as something that I think it lines up with everything else that's happening right now in our world. Like, it just makes sense. Yeah. Everybody wants that easy solution. Well, the easy solution is AC and heat, until that doesn't exist. And no, I'm not saying we're going back to the dark ages.
Oh, crap.
But
felt like it when I came in my office this morning. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Walked in this morning. It Felt like a sauna in here.
I love it.
So all I did, I was like, man,
You took your shirt off,
Nope.
put yourself. What'd
I
you
just
do?
propped the door open, turned my little corner fan on,
Yep.
and I went somewhere else.
And you went.
Somewhere else. Till it cooled off.
So, my thinking is simple, that if we just give our bodies a chance to adjust, give our bodies a chance to regulate, yeah. Is it always going to be a little uncomfortable when it's hot out? Yes. We live in the South, okay? Yeah. But I remember maybe three circumstances in the Marine Corps. And again, I get it. I joined the Marine Corps. It was my decision. Some of those uncomfortable times were a result of that decision. I get it. But it taught me a lot. When we were deployed and it was hot and we were overseas, man, it would take, I don't know, 10 days to where your body just kind of got used to, it was, getting ready for patrol. It's 110 degrees and you got long sleeves, you got a heavy flak, all your gear. And you walk out that door and you're like, oh man,
It's bad.
But guess what? Looking back on it, I honestly, the heat was probably the fifth or sixth thing that I remember the most about that. It had nothing to do with really the heat. My body got so used to it that it figured it out.
My buddy told me that when he was over there, said, I don't know if he was in Kuwait. Maybe he was. I don't remember where he told me. He said it was so hot they were only allowed to come out. They only patrolled at night.
What branch of the military was he in?
Army.
Yeah, okay.
They only came
Makes
out at
sense.
night. Some kind of. I knew that was coming. I knew
every
it.
once in a while,
I freaking knew it.
Every once in a while, you kind of got to go out other than night. But hey, I get it. Some of those. But here's the thing. I think the leadership that's a failure at the top of the leadership to teach these guys. Guess what? Are bad guys out only at night?
No.
Okay. Well, guess what? We'll better figure it out. Okay.
Yeah.
If that means we got to shorten the patrols, if that means we got to do more,
Hydrate more.
checks and balances with hydration, whatever, we'll figure it out. But that's something that you can't work around. And same thing goes for the cold. I remember in the desert, man, it'll get stupid hot in the day and it will freeze at night. And I remember being colder than I'm from Michigan, being colder than I've ever remembered in my life. And just thinking to myself, gosh, if I could just be warm. And it was this weird cycle, because then the next day would come and you'd be
if I could
so
just cool off.
Yes.
Then at night, man, if I could warm up, that's terrible.
And really what happened was, what I do remember was how quickly the morale changed when people started to whine and complain. Because once you heard a couple other people complain and whine about the cold or the heat, then you started to think about, oh man, it is kind of cold, or is it kind of hot? Okay. Once we kind of figured that out, and 10 days into it, everybody just kind of got over it, and we realized that, we're here for 7 months. We can't change it. You can't control Mother Nature. And a month in, it wasn't even a topic of conversation. Didn't even cross your mind. You just got used to it. The same thing, man. It's not even July yet. No. So, are we going to set the standard that says, you know what? If it's 98, I'm not going to the gym. Well, what? Okay, cool. What if it's over 98 half the month of July? Are we taking half the month off?
Yeah.
I mean, that type of mindset is tough. Now, what I do think is smart is if you do come in, which I absolutely think you should, then maybe you're going to have to adjust how you work out.
Just dial it back a little bit.
You're going to have to adjust your intensity. And don't tell me that, oh, well, if I come in here, I'm going to pass out. You might if you try and go 110% like you would in the fall.
Just move. If it's 100 degrees and you're profusely sweating, you had a long day, whatever, just move.
And maybe it means, you know what, bring ice water with you. And I'm never in the summertime, I'm never going to give you a hard time about drinking water. Now, if it's 60 degrees outside and you're stopping in an 8-minute workout to go get a drink from the drinking fountain, we got a problem. Okay. But if it's 100 degrees out, I will never, ever. I told my class, I said, cool, if we run this mile like we got today and you got to walk. If you start to feel like, man, I'm getting overheated, stop. Find a little shade and just figure it out. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because sooner or later, we can't hide from the elements. And the other story I'll tell you is Japan. We went over to Japan as part of a unit deployment program, and they kept us over there for 6 months in case something happened in North Korea or South Korea. So we stayed there, and people think that Florida and Charlotte is humid. It's not humid. What is humid is Japan, Okinawa. Oh, it was brutal. You know how bad I sweat now? I'm telling you, we stayed in these barracks about, I don't know, a half mile, maybe less than that from our headquarters. And every morning we'd get up at 6:30 and we'd walk over to the headquarters to start the day. And I'd have to bring an extra uniform, extra socks, extra underwear, extra shirt, extra blouse, extra trousers, because by the time it was an 8-minute walk. By the time I got there, it looked like I took a shower.
Oh my gosh.
It was the worst.
Terrible.
And you ever heard of prickly heat rash? Mm-hmm. Prickly heat rash is when your back turns like it has red spots everywhere because you end up wearing kind of like a wet shirt and you go back out in the heat and it dries, then gets wet, then dries, and it messes you up. And you have that prickly heat rash, from head to toe of your back because you just can't keep clean. Like if we'd go to the field, I'd bring every T-shirt that I had, every green T-shirt I had, because you'd have to
keep changing.
Yeah, but guess what? After it took a little longer than 10 days, I'll promise you that. And I do remember that. Like this, it was scarring humidity. Like it scarred me mentally.
Why is it so humid there? Just where it is, like.
Yeah, I'm not smart enough to understand the latitude and longitude of it, but it just must have something to do. It was terrible. And but after the first month, you just figured it out. It was something
went from 6 shirts to 3.
Yeah,
2.
and you just I don't think it got any easier. You just learned to live with it a little bit. You got used to that uncomfortable feeling. Yeah. And those are some of the circumstances that I wonder. Let's say we do lose a power grid in the U.S. for a week to 10 days. Is that would you say that's an outrageous thought that we could potentially lose power for 7 to 10 days?
No.
I personally don't think that's far-fetched at all.
No.
And to me, if I'm watching how we handled the pandemic and I'm overseas in China or one of these other countries that don't really like us that much, I'm looking at this saying, wow, what an incredible opportunity to cripple this country.
Oh, yeah.
Is let's take away, let's hit some cell towers, and let's attack the power grid. They tried to do it with the pipeline, right? They hacked into the gas pipeline.
Yeah.
Right? So if they can do that, do you not think it's feasible?
Knock out some power.
And let me tell you something. You wouldn't even have to do it anywhere but the South.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're up north. My mom does not have air conditioning in their house.
Mainly be the South that would. Yep. They would freak out.
You knock it out from North Carolina down to Florida. Oh man.
Yeah.
What are people going to do? I mean, people won't
function. Catastrophic.
It will be terrible.
People won't go to work and stuff. Like they'll call out and be like, "Hey."
Because we're just not used to letting our bodies adjust to anything that's uncomfortable. And we fight everything to the point where we can't function. We will stop functioning. And I would go as far as to say, if you take people's phones away, that'd be the first thing that cripples you. Then all of a sudden,
how do I
you take the grid away where they don't have electricity? You can't, your coffee pot's not working.
If you take away electricity, technically after a day or so or whatever, they don't have a phone.
Oh yeah, donezo.
They just that would be the worst. I think they would do that. Would deal with a phone, with a computer.
So then you look at guys that have generators. You'd have pandemonium with people that had generators because you'd have everyone scrambling, stealing stuff.
Yep.
You know, I look at it on a small scale. I saw that. You know, I see this happening now to where we've just become so bad at handling situations that are uncomfortable, that, man, and look, I'm just as bad as everybody else. You know, I've gotten very comfortable. I went through those situations I told you about when I was in the Marine Corps. When I got out of the Marine Corps, give me a year out, I was completely back to that pre-Marine Corps mindset to where I don't like being hot. I don't like being cold. But I also I've talked about this before. When Jess gets ready in the morning, she's always up before me, actually, and I always tell her that I feel like I'm at the airport and like I'm on a runway because there's like more light in the bathroom than I've ever seen in my life. And I've always made it a point to, like, if I don't need the lights on, I'll brush my teeth in the dark. I'll get ready in the dark. And it's not dark. Your eyes adjust. But if you walk into a room and you hit the lights off, really right away you're like, oh my gosh, it's really dark. Yeah. If everybody just waits like 30 seconds, your eyes start to adjust and you got a lot more light. And little things like that will start to, maybe you don't have the air on in your car. I tell Jess all the time, we're driving somewhere and I'll put the window down, and as long as I've got a breeze coming through, I don't mind the breeze versus AC, because then when I get out of that car, it just feels so much hotter. Yeah. Try it next time. For anybody that doesn't believe me, drive somewhere. If you're in the car for 10, 15 minutes, instead of putting the AC blasting on max AC, which is another pet peeve of mine, like, don't use max AC. Just turn it to cold. You use max AC, you press the button, max AC.
Yeah, I just turn the dial all the way, and then it automatically turns it on for me.
Negative.
Just when I first get in, just to get it going.
You know how hard it is in your car?
Yeah.
So
it's harder on my body. It'd be hot.
So, try it next time where you leave the AC off, you put the windows down, and you just get some air in there. And it might not be as comfortable, but I promise you, when you get out after a 10 or 15 minute drive, it will feel so much better. So
yesterday it was pretty hot, so I said, you know what? I got this fancy app on my phone that connects to my truck. I said, hey man, it's hot. Why don't I just start my truck?
No, you didn't.
So I started it here from my office.
No, you didn't.
Waited about 10 minutes. Went down there, and it felt pretty nice in there. I guess the Ford has a little climate thing on there, so it doesn't turn on max AC. I wish it would. But it had it on like level 2, so when I got in, it was semi-comfortable. And then I turned it all the way up.
Oh, man.
But I caught myself doing that yesterday. So it was a good podcast.
It was funny, we were out.
But prior to that, I had done PT, coached a couple classes. I was a little wet, so I just wanted a little bit of that.
Okay.
I didn't go from AC to...
What's interesting is we talk to Steve Hall about this all the time.
Oh,
he doesn't. He comes from the same mindset as me, which is why I love him so much. He very rarely runs the AC, and
he does. It's just on 80.
Yes,
so
it's probably set to 79 or 80.
Yeah.
And we were in there the other day, and it got really loud all of a sudden, and it was so confusing to me because it took me like 30 seconds to realize. I'm like, gosh dang it! I was getting ready to text Nate and be like, what is going on next door? What's that noise? And I realized it was the AC that kicked on, but I'd never heard the AC over there.
No, once it kicked on, we were on the far end of the mat. When that breeze hit our wet gi,
I said, man, wow.
This feels pretty good.
It feels weird.
This feels good.
And then I remember I looked over at Steve, and Steve looked at me, and he's like, I said, man, I'm surprised you adjusted that. He's like, I didn't. Whoever came in here on Sunday, he left the box unlocked, and they must have adjusted it. So that might have been the only time we hear that kick on for the summer. But it's just,
it's like we won the lottery.
Yeah, you get so used to. But here's the thing: we got so used to it, we don't even talk about it anymore.
No, we just.
But then when that kicked on, we were like, oh man,
yeah,
that's crazy. So that's what it feels like to, whatever. So your body is so amazing at adjusting to things, and I believe I'll butcher the word. I think it's thermoregulation or whatever it's called, where it's your body's ability to acclimate to whatever the outside temperature is, and it's really good at doing that. So, case in point, if you live up by the North Pole and it's cold all the time, you're really good at managing the cold. Your body has adapted to that. Okay, so you could go up to the North Pole, and you'd be freezing, maybe for 8 months, a year, 2 years, whatever. But your body will slowly start to adapt to that temperature.
It's not that bad no more.
And then all of a sudden, you're like that. I come up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how are you outside?
I'm like, you'll get used to it.
Yeah, but if we never do that, if we never give our bodies the ability to learn that adaptation, then we're really missing the the mark on this, and then we're going to fall into that trap of.
I watched a thing the other day on some tribes or something, and they were showing the way their feet looked, and it was insane. Their feet look like an extra pair of hands. Their toes are wide apart. They're thick. They have muscle on their hand or feet, and they could walk across broken glass and the glass won't penetrate it. Like they could climb a tree. They could, because their body got so used to that from all the way up. They didn't have shoes. They don't have that stuff, and their feet were.
What would happen if you took your shoes off and walked across like a piece of asphalt and caught like one of those tiny little pieces of stone?
Urgent care.
Yeah, we'd be going to the hospital.
Yeah.
You know,
can you cover my class tonight? I'm at urgent care getting this pebble out.
It's just crazy.
These guys are just nothing. It smashes the pebble.
And they don't have plantar fasciitis. They don't have ankle problems. They probably don't have calf issues.
If you look them guys up, it's insane.
Yeah. And that's just from getting outside and walking and growing up, being outside on our feet. But again, I'm not saying...
The body adapted to it. We're not saying don't wear shoes, but in general, your body...
We adapt to it.
Yeah.
You know, there's a reason when you go to any tropical island where the climate's really hot, all the locals, they wear long sleeve shirts. Mm-hmm. Well, they do that because they don't want to get, their skin burned.
Well, I asked a landscaping crew one time. All of them were wearing long sleeve shirts, pants, hat. Someone had gloves. And it's it's like 1,000 degrees. I said, God, there's no way I could do that. Then I asked one of them, I said, how are you wearing that, man? He's like, it keeps me cool. I said, what?
Keeps the sun off of them.
It keeps it from beating on their skin, protects them from skin cancer, sunburn, all. And actually, if you do sweat on the inside, it kind of like is an extra layer of protection with the cool, whatever.
But if we're constantly used to AC, we throw on a long sleeve shirt and walk outside.
God.
Let alone a black long sleeve shirt. Well, dude, I'm going down.
Yeah, down.
So
I'm not cutting grass.
It's just something where we've got to get better at this, and you've got to challenge yourself a little bit. And maybe it's because we don't have the discipline to hydrate the way we should. Maybe it's because we've had a bad experience in the past. Maybe it's because we're constantly being told by the news, don't go outside, it's too hot. What are you talking about? I mean, that's the dumbest...
UV level today, stay out.
I mean, it's just so ridiculous, the amount of fear that people gather from stupid pundits on TV.
What's crazy is the news, when they say that, they're right and wrong.
How so?
Because it goes with what you're saying. We're so used to the AC and being comfortable. Say it's supposed to be hot and nice this weekend. It's going to be really hot. People's like, man, this weekend, let's go to the lake. Let's have a little fun. So if you take somebody that's an AC 98% of the time, whatever, they don't really hydrate or anything, and then they want to go have a little fun on the lake and throw back some alcohol and some beer and whatever, the news probably should warn them to not go out there.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, the news isn't saying you should do it more often or build yourself up to that.
You know how I fixed this in the Marine Corps that I think could help a lot of people? Whenever it was cold and it rained or snowed, we stopped what we were doing and we went outside and we did PT. That was like the rule. It was terrible.
You had to work out.
Then you checked in, you go to officer candidate school and they give you all this amazing gear, like warm, big stuff you can put on your neck, and gloves, and then under gloves, and then sweatshirts, and then under sweatshirts, and these long johns. And I'm from Michigan, so I'm seeing this. I'm like, dude,
this is
are you kidding me? This won't even affect me a bit. This is awesome. I throw this stuff on, I could be outside for 3 days in a row. Don't matter to me. Yeah. We never wore it once.
It's just there, knowing.
It sat in our locker, our foot lockers. But we'd go outside, we'd train, we'd get wet, and then it would be freezing cold, and they'd get us all sweaty, and then make you stay out there. And then they'd do like a situation brief or something where they sit us down, and you're sitting outside while it's raining, and you're just then your sweat gets frozen, and then you start to freeze. It's miserable. But the other thing they did when it got hot, because we were there for both winter and then we stayed through the summer, and you had a lot of people mentally that would give up when it would get really hot. And heat, exhaustion, and heat.
I think heat make you give up probably quicker than cold, right?
Man,
unless you involve water.
It's interesting,
right?
I don't know. I really don't know.
I think if you involve water and it's cold, it's
I saw
bad,
people
worse.
go internal. We called it going internal in the cold, where they would just shut down,
Completely
like
just-
like when KB is over in jiu-jitsu. My favorite thing in the world. I love
He goes
Chris
away
Bennett
at
more than
night,
life
too.
itself. Awesome guy.
He hasn't done it in a while, but boy, he's
When we
known
first started
for it.
training over there, you'd be rolling around with him, and he's a strong cat. But when his energy goes, it's like a battery level.
He's unplugged him.
You all of a sudden you're wrestling around with him, and he's giving off resistance, and all of a sudden he goes completely limp, and you're like,
Done.
he's like, I'm done.
Yeah, he was just I'm done.
But that's what you'd see when people get really cold is they stop being able to process their critical thinking.
Well, that's why the Navy SEALs. That's why they're Hell Week and all that stuff.
Because there was so much cold.
Cold plus the water.
Yeah.
That is terrible. That shuts them down with lack of sleep.
But what in the heat is also, I mean,
That's
it's
bad, too.
debilitating. But what happened is both of these, cold extreme and heat extreme, I think mentally is where it breaks you. Physically, you can last longer than what your mind will.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's with anything. Anything is tough. But what was
Your
happening
mind
for
makes
us,
it worse.
our heat, we'd have a lot of people, I don't know the definition, the book difference between heat exhaustion, heat stroke. They're both bad. But we would have people fall out of these runs or ruck marches, whatever it was, and it'd be heat cases. And what would happen is the first couple people would fall out and they get put in the back of a truck, and the truck would be driving whatever. And you start to see, oh, wait a second. If I fall out, I get to get in the back of a truck and drive. So it would start to get other people that would fall out.
All fall out.
And that happened for 2 days where we're like, man, as soon as the first one or two goes, you'll
The
start to
rest
see
start.
more. And finally, I don't know if it was a CO or the sergeant major, it was a brilliant, one of the smartest things I've seen someone do in a training setting. They said, cool, we are so concerned for your safety. We are taking heat stroke very seriously. We do not want any more heat cases. And we want everybody to understand we have their best interest in mind. So we're going to take your temperature as soon as you go down. We'll take your temperature and make sure it's below, I don't know if it's 104 or whatever. And we were all like, wow, that's pretty cool. And as we were leaving, they said, oh, one last thing. It'll be a rectal temperature that we take because it's more accurate. And he was dead serious. So the first guy that fell out, Corman came up, pulled his
Right in
pants
front of
down.
everybody,
Everybody stuck at the thermometer up the old rectum, got his temperature, and put him in the back of the truck. Guess how many people fell out after that?
Everybody fell out.
Not one.
They didn't want
Not
that.
one. So think about that.
Yeah.
So
It was more mental.
all of a
they
sudden-
got mentally tougher after seeing that.
yeah, you gave them the alternative, and it's like, okay, maybe I don't have heat exhaustion. Maybe I'm just a little soft and need to toughen up a little bit.
Yeah.
So again, I think obviously we can't do those things as civilians.
We'll start doing that here at Vitality. If you fall out, Nate's coming down there to the 800 to take your rectal temperature.
But it sure would. We talked about a lot. We messed around. I remember the days of competing, and we were doing a lot of max ring support holds.
Oh, gosh.
And we said, man, I wonder how long you can hold it if there was like spikes or something underneath you. And
Copperhead.
yeah. I wonder how long you could really go, because your mind always breaks first. So I thought that was interesting. And my life these days is fairly boring because I got Jess and Reagan are in Orlando. So Charlie's up with my mom in Michigan.
When are you not alone again?
I don't know. They come back and then they leave again for Indianapolis for 5 days. So I'm talking about, I'm gonna have like 2 weeks by myself.
We got so much to do.
But I go to bed. I went to bed at
That's
7:50.
what I'm saying.
I know it's
That's
not
the
normal.
issue.
I know. But
Like this weekend, if I said, "Hey, Steve, let's go do this," and you're like, "Well, I got to be done by 5." I'm like, "What?"
well,
It's Saturday night,
I get it. I just
so we can't hang out.
it's just, to me, I love getting up early now because I can go to bed a little earlier. I'm usually the one. Jess likes to stay up a little bit later than me, so she'll push it to like 8:30, 8:40, living on the edge. I'm ready. Like 8 o'clock, I'm ready. Like,
You're ready to go.
You know, like what am I gonna do?
That's because you went to bed 14 hours prior. Yeah. So your body's like, get up. You know, if you went to bed at midnight, you'd be like, 8:40 is good.
But like this morning, I'm like, geez, it was 5:50. I woke up. I said, son of a gun, I'm wide awake. Let's go. I was out cleaning up. We had that little storm outside. You know,
oh my gosh,
running the blower. My neighbors hate my guts.
Andy.
You know? Yeah.
Just Andy.
But yeah, so I this is one of those topics that I thought of in the middle of the night, and I woke up and I said, I can't wait to tell Phil, but I'm gonna wait until right before I want to do it.
I can't wait till Jess comes back.
It's gonna be a little bit.
There's gonna be a lot more of these. Hey man, last night when I was sleeping for 12 hours, I come up with another idea.
Guys, the only thing I want you to take from this is
Turn your air off.
What?
Turn your AC off.
I don't need you to turn your AC off at home, but just don't let the external things that you can't control, these external factors like the weather, play a role in whether you do something to better yourself, whether that's working out, whether that's eating right, whether that's going for a walk after dinner, whatever it might be. When you start giving in to that temptation of comfort, I promise you nothing good will happen.
Well, your career too, real quick. So like photography stuff I like doing, some of the most amazing videos and photos I've ever seen were taken in bad conditions that other photographers won't go out in. So if it's monsooning, it's raining, it's lightning, it's snowing, whatever, 90-something% of people, they just, I need to wait till it's nice, it's spring, it's fall, whatever.
Yeah.
But those ones that go out in that and weather the storm, they put stuff on their equipment, it's just a hassle getting there. When they get that final shot or video, that what makes them like the top 1%. Like they're out there in it.
Yeah.
Just like the storm chasers, like they're in the stuff.
Perfect example is Marty Williams. You know, every time it's hurricane season, they'll shut down these cities that the hurricane's coming to and have everybody get out of there because, you know, it's too dangerous. What will Marty do? He'll take all of his equipment. He's figured out how to make it as safe as possible, and he drives straight to that. And he sits through the storm, weathers that storm, and then when it passes through, he's the only show in town. So, and guess what happens? They're not letting anybody else in because everything else got screwed up. He's already in there, and he can go around and he crushes it. You know, so the fear of, you know, yeah, is there some danger? Sure, but he's mitigated all that, and he's not going to let that influence what his decision is. So these are all a mindset you have to have that's a little bit different than everybody else. If you have the same mindset as the majority of everybody else, I promise you are wrong. I promise you that's not the right mindset. Yeah. You want the mindset where people look at you and they're like, man, what's wrong with that dude? Yeah. That's the mindset. That means you're going against the grain. That means you're not settling for what this normal this normal mental toughness is, which is very limited. Limited.
Well, it's like that book I was just actually finally finished. It took me a while.
A good 11-month book.
But it made me think, if I want to do something good with money or make some money, whatever, so you take, what's the financial advisor people or whatever, they do that for their career?
Yeah, financial advisors.
So say somebody does that for 30, 40, whatever years, and they're working still at 50. They're retired or 60-something. There might be, I'm not saying they're not smart, but do I want to do what that guy tells me to do with my money? Yeah. Or would I rather look at somebody that's not that financial advisor that's kind of doing whatever they want to do and going where they want to go and say, hey, man, what do you do with that money?
Yeah.
I would rather just do it with what that guy's doing, not the guy that's retiring at 70 telling me what to do with my money.
Yeah.
If he knew it and was doing it, he wouldn't still be doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some truth to that. You know, stop following people that aren't living the way you want to live. If you want to live differently, then go find someone that's living the way that you want to live and go figure out what they're doing. Go ask them. If
you want abs like Spencer, you're going to have to show up when it's hot outside here at the gym.
Yeah.
Spencer was down here earlier sweating like a pig. Yep. He walked into my office, and he's like, man, your fan feels nice, but he was drenched. He was down there getting it.
Yep. And and when you see people, you know, like Jessica will go in the back of that pain cave, and she'll sweat through, 3 outfits. And But people want to say, "Oh, well, she's just gifted genetically." No, she's not.
She's back there for hours working out.
Yeah, and that's the difference. And people want to make excuses, and the reality is, if we can just get a little bit more mentally tough every day, that's the answer. You don't have to do anything crazy. You just got to get a little tougher every day, and then look at it in a way that when nobody else, when other people aren't doing something, man, that gives me so much motivation. When I told my class, that group of 10, I said, man, I love this. I love that you look around and you know that there's 10 or 11 people missing right now that didn't have the toughness to come in and train, and you guys are here, and hey, it's going to hurt today. Yeah. Make no mistake about it. Yeah. But understand that you're going to get way better today. Yeah. And that gives me, man, that makes my skin stand up, because man, it's just there's something about that when everybody can't do it. That's what I love. Yeah. I love it. So, guys, until next time, watch that AC, and this is the Built by Vitality podcast.